Stephanie is a 9-year-old girl who is abandoned by her parents for unknown reasons. She lives alone in that house and just about takes care of herself. Her main companion is a turtle's delicate toy, whom she calls Francis. An ordinary day for Stephanie comprises of watching kids' shows, playing the piano, getting ready smoothies for her, and investing energy with Francis the turtle. One day, Stephanie turns on the TV, and the news channels broadcast what is happening in the world, where a few heavenly powers are unleashing ruin in various nations. They likewise notice that a severe quarantine has been proclaimed, and individuals are approached to remain inside their homes. But Stephanie Channel surfs past them to watch Desperiaux, Equestria Girls, and Friendship is Magic. Being a 9-year-old, she is ungainly at all that she does, and frequently ruins the house. Notwithstanding, she is as yet satisfied and glad to live alone, without her parents. That very day, as Stephanie is setting up a smoothie in the kitchen, she hears an unexpected commotion coming from higher up. Frightened, the young girl surges there, just to find a ball dropping as though somebody is welcoming her to play. Without knowing who the individual is, Stephanie hollers at him and gets back to the kitchen. Sadly, there, she steps on a messed up piece of glass, which makes her shout in torment. In any case, as there is nobody to take care of her, she rapidly refocuses and limps higher up, where she grabs a first aid kit and keeps an eye on her injury. Later at night, Stephanie prepares dinner and serves it on plates for 4 people in the family. 2 for her parents and the other 2 for her brother and herself. She then brushes her teeth and sleeps after reading a tale to her doll Francis. The next morning, Stephanie places Francis on the floor and urges him to play hide and seek. She then goes straight to a room and hides inside a makeshift tent. There, while she is looking at a family photo album, Stephanie hears a dangerous creature's sound coming from outside the house. Terrified, she closes her mouth and tries her best to remain quiet. The monster hurls near Stephanie but leaves when it doesn't see anyone. After a while, Stephanie slowly comes out of her tent and approaches the window to take a look at the creature. Sadly, she sees no one and deduces that the creature has escaped into the nearby woods. She then tells Francis that the monster doesn't like noises, so they should remain silent. In the afternoon, as Stephanie is playing football with Francis, she notices her pet rabbit, Mr. Hopper, wandering around the garden. It turns out that he has somehow managed to get out of his cage. Stephanie asks Mr. Hopper to wait for a while and rushes to the kitchen to prepare some food for him. After some time, she comes back with a bowl full of tomato sauce. The rabbit then hops away in the direction of the woods, preventing her from successfully luring Mr. Hopper back inside. The electricity then abruptly shuts off as Stephanie is brushing her teeth that night, startling her. Paul's room, where she quickly runs after him and grabs his hand. Oddly, the hands appear frail and pallid, as if he had already passed away. But, as Stephanie begs Paul to defend her, his hand moves slowly, suggesting that a paranormal entity is now in possession of him. She is frightened to death by a loud bang at night by the window. She checks the area cautiously and slowly and discovers blood all throughout. The young girl finds her pet rabbit, Mr. Hopper, horribly hurt and bleeding on the table after following the trail. She storms into Paul's room and accuses him of being responsible for the parents' departure as well as the killing of the rabbits. She then selects a baseball bat and begins hitting his lying body on the bed. As a result, Paul's headdress slides, and his decomposing face is exposed. The electricity goes off again the following night while it is raining. When Stephanie walks to the basement to grab some candles, she finds the washing machine shaking erratically as if there is something stuck inside. She rushes to her homemade tent out of fear and falls asleep. Stephanie hears the door being opened late at night. She goes downstairs to check it out and notices water all over the floor. So she suspects someone has broken in. It is obvious that someone is standing behind her back as lightning strikes. Stephanie enters the restroom and locks herself inside after becoming anxious. She closes her mouth in dread as she hears the approaching footsteps. But she was surprised to see that her parents, Eric and Jane, had come to see her. The young girl then meets up with her parents again and spends the night with them. The following day, Jane gets dressed in front of Stephanie when she's presumably dozing. But she is mistaken. The young child is awake and looks back at her mother. Stephanie is alarmed by the strange scars on her mother's belly that resemble dots later. She sees her father trying to build a fence around the house while hauling wooden blocks. He says he is taking these actions to defend the home against the monster. When Stephanie notices this, she runs to her brother's room but doesn't find the body there. She goes on to enter the woods in search of her brother without alerting anyone. She is shocked to discover that her parents have already buried Paul in the area of the backyard. The young girl is called by her parents as she desperately tries to remove the body with her hands while furious. Stephanie's mother, Jane, advises her to never leave the fence without their consent when she gets home. The young child agrees but says she would like Paul to come home. Stephanie queries her mother the following morning over pancakes as to why she left her home alone. Jane responds that it was not her decision because they believed Stephanie had also been taken hostage by the creature. When the young girl's mother hears this, she tells her that the monster lives in the woods and that it will attack them whenever there is commotion or disturbance inside the home. She also says that when the monster enters the house, one should keep quiet and be composed. Paul's dead body is returned to the house through the window later that night by an unknown power. Seeing this makes both of his parents sad because they had just buried him with heavy hearts. Stephanie, however, responds regularly, as if nothing unexpected happened. She asks Eric at dinner if the monster brought her brother back, and Eric replies in the affirmative. In addition, he warns Stephanie that the monster is chasing her and will follow them everywhere. In the following scene, Stephanie sneaks into her mother's room and discovers a board with countless newspaper clippings, some of which depict young children just like her doing horrific acts. She peruses a book left on the table and discovers that Jane is actually attempting to learn about brain surgery and its techniques. Jane comes into the room as Stephanie is browsing other posters, forcing her to hide beneath the table. When Jane looks at the brain images, she appears anxious and loses her cool, throwing them away. Afterward, as Eric approaches Stephanie, she can be seen relaxing in the bathtub. He explains to her that the monster is only a byproduct of her negative emotions and not an outside entity. She must therefore exert self-control and make an effort not to allow her negative emotions to rule her. Stephanie accepts formally but then queries her father as to why she was left alone. Eric becomes upset by this and begins to whisper that he was scared and unsure of what to do to save his family. Stephanie hears her parents discussing how to manage her when she goes downstairs at night. In contrast to Jane, Eric appears optimistic and thinks Stephanie can control her emotions. Eric refuses her suggestion to undertake a brain operation, arguing that it is risky. Also, he keeps saying that he doesn't want to lose his daughter. When Stephanie hears this, she remains silent and simply goes back to her room to sleep. She hears an odd sound in her dream coming from the side of the front door. She approaches it slowly and sees that it is already open. She approaches the door and it closes abruptly, startling her. In spite of this, she cautiously opens the door and discovers the ghost of her father on the other side. As soon as she hears this, she begins to scream and eventually awakens from her nightmare. Stephanie isn't entirely sure it was all in her head, though. She then descends the stairs and waits in front of the door. Her parents show up at that same moment and console her. Stephanie reveals to Eric that she dreamed of the monster killing him. And as soon as she says this, a mysterious paranormal entity appears and pulls Eric out via the front door. Jane notices this and transports Stephanie to a closet-sized hiding area. In order to prevent the monster from hearing them and coming back, Stephanie instructs her mother to keep quiet and calm. After a few periods of silence, Jane emerges from the closet to look around. She tells the young girl that everything is in order after noting anything. Unfortunately, she is drawn by the same invisible power when she asks Stephanie to go with her. Stephanie rushes to her room out of fear, grabs Francis, and jumps out the window. In the process, she hurts herself, but she immediately gets back up and tries to climb a ladder to get to the house. Despite their best efforts, Eric and Jane are unable to stop her because of an invisible force that appears to be coming from the young girl herself. Thankfully, Jane uses the last of her energy to help Stephanie descend the ladder. Their problems, however, are far from ending. A bizarre thing with tentacles tries to attack the parents from all sides as they are lying on the ground. Jane commands her daughter to stop, but the youngster disobeys because she is so terrified. But before any more harm can be done, Jane pulls out a handkerchief that has been chloroformed and applies it to Stephanie's face, sending her to sleep. She tells Stephanie that you are the monster now that the beast has been hushed. Stephanie apologizes to her parents for leaving the house without their permission when she wakes up the following morning. Eric consoles her and explains that she has a monster inside of her that is in charge of her behavior and thoughts. He then makes an attempt to mesmerize Stephanie and asks her about what she did to Paul with the use of some pendulum balls. The young child shuts her eyes and confesses that Paul began making fun of her while they were carving pumpkins for Halloween. She used all of her limbs, or tentacles, to assault him for this reason. As she starts acting violently again after saying this, Jane uses a vaccination to calm her down. The parents then take Stephanie to an operating room where Jane starts to chop open her head. When Eric tries to stop her, his wife says that doing so is the only way to keep her alive and secure. It emerges that she wants to operate on her brain to eradicate the monster. However, just as the process is about to start, the little girl who is possessed regains awareness and uses her powers to completely demolish the lab. The following scene finds Eric watching the news, which reports that a medical technique used to treat children like Stephanie around the world has gone horribly wrong, killing a huge number of doctors and other medical staff in the process. The medical treatment was the final-ditch effort to discover a cure, according to the report. The only option left after it failed was to put the kids with this unusual ailment to death. Stephanie presents a blank stare. On the other hand, the parents plan to poison their daughter's hot chocolate in order to kill her. Then Eric invites Stephanie to go for a walk with him in the woods. Stephanie apologizes to her father for hurting him while the two bond outside. The remarks move Eric, but after a little pause, he instructs his daughter to consume the hot chocolate. Her telekinesis ability, however, throws the sipper away just as she prepares to swallow it, and her face begins to become blue. She makes an effort to restrain herself but is unsuccessful, causing Eric to draw his revolver and shot her many times. Following the event, a sad Eric goes back home, thinking Stephanie has passed away. He sobs uncontrollably as he admits his shame for what he has done. But when he begins to bury Stephanie's body the following day, he discovers her standing at the fence's back entrance. Eric tries to respond in shock, but Stephanie uses her telekinesis to throw him into the air without giving him a chance. She then drags Jane downstairs and ruthlessly beats her against the walls as she brings her downstairs from the restroom. She then breaks Jane's bones and stabs Eric with a knife, killing them both instantaneously and telling them they shouldn't have come back. She uses her telekinetic abilities to completely destroy the home in the last scene before dragging her parents' corpses outside and leaving them at Paul's grave. After dropping and walking on her toy turtle, she supposedly does more damage to the neighborhood's other homes to show that she has been possessed by the force. Her shadow now resembles a huge octopus with outstretched tentacles. In the final moments of the film, the entire world is seen from above, entirely destroyed by devastating fires. This suggests that a number of additional telekinetic kids are still living.
Hello, welcome to our channel. We upload a lot of stuffs which you might be interested. Please subscribe the channel right now to avoid missing out those contents. So, please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. If you feel the video is valuable, then do like the video and share it with your friends. Thank you.